What's up, guys?
It's Terry
and Rowan from
ArtofSmartTV.
And we're here with another episode of the HSC Economics Review. So in this episode, we're super mindful that, a lot of HSC students are probably rolling into their exam, your final HSC Economics exam pretty soon. So what we thought would be really useful is to do, the state of the Australian economy, a check-in on, before you go into that exam, where are things really at? What's changed? What are some of the issues that you should be mindful of? Now, this isn't just going to be useful though for HSC students. If you've just started Year 12, this is a great way to sort of come in and get like an overview of what's going on in the economy, right? So Year 11, it's going to be really important to set a foundation, but for Year 12 guys, this is critical just to update your stats, update your understanding so that you go into that HSC Economics exam with the most up-to-date analysis that you can bring for those short answers and in particular those essays. So Terry, a question, right? We've seen the Australian economy go through some interesting fluctuations this year, shall we say. What's happening right now? What's the current state of the Australian economy?
Right, so I think the first thing that's just come out recently was that unemployment edged up, 0.1% from 5.2% to 5.3%. Now, if you remember early in this year, there was a revised estimation of the Nauru at 4.5%, and our unemployment rate is at 5.3%, which implies that there is a spare capacity gap, which means that we could afford to hire, more people, and inflation wouldn't kick off just yet. So that's gone up a little bit, and economic growth still quite low at 1.4%.
So it's just flatlining.
Yeah, inflation hasn't really moved up either at 1.6%.
Flatlining.
Yeah. And the dollar continues to, not flatline, it continues to fall.
Yeah, it continues to drop. So I think what's interesting in this as a quick update, right, is that, eco growth hasn't shifted, inflation hasn't shifted, but unemployment has risen, which sort of says something, interesting, I think, about the economy, right? Because, you'd in some respects expect if we think about that, that good old, Phillips curve relationship, you would expect that for unemployment to rise, right, we've seen economic growth maybe fall a little, and we're not seeing that, which I suppose is good, but it's still certainly saying that unemployment's growing and we're there's a bigger gap that's starting to occur.
Yes.
Now, it's not just unemployment, it's also underutilisation, we're also seeing that's gone up a smidgen as well. It's gone up, from 13.7 to 13.8, so yeah, really small as well, but it's also showing that not only are people, they're not having work, we're also seeing just that broader issue that, we've also got a lot of spare capacity with people that are working that would like more work, hence that flatlining inflation rate. So when we look at this, the dollar's also, as you said, going down. It was 68, it's trending to 67. And look, analysts have said it may hit as low as 60 cents by the end of the year if the US-China trade and technology dispute continues to occur, right? So, does this sound like a good, strong economy?
If we just look at what we've seen, it doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence, right? But interestingly enough, Governor Lowe has just said that we are starting to bounce back from this rough patch. Now, the only thing that's jumped out for me as a future, hopefully not so future first-time home owner, is that the housing market has started to pick up a little bit again. Auction rates are getting a little bit higher. Housing prices are starting to rise a little bit again. That's the only sign for me. Now, Rowan, were there any signs for you that the economy was actually starting to pick itself up again?
Yeah, look, it's interesting because I think for me, I was a little confused, honestly, because I feel like, over the last couple of months, almost every week there's been an article with, the governor of the RBA really talking up a struggling economy.
Yes.
And look, part of that was, I think, jawboning and strategically putting pressure on, trying to put pressure on, the government to change their fiscal position, So I think there was strategy, but it was certainly surprising to see it go from, the perspective of doom and, not quite doom and gloom, but certainly we might be there if we don't do something, to like we've gone past the soft patch, we're in recovery. And so I'm equally a little surprised. Now, the other things that you could look at though to say that we are making this recovery is that, there's been improving investment in the mining sector, and that's been a mixture of, one, Brazilian challenges. Okay, there's been some issues in Brazil in terms of supply, which is creating more demand for Australia, right? Which is going to attract some more investment in Australia to meet that. Adani got approved. Unfortunately, if you're an environmentalist, that's going to be horrible, but it means that there's going to be more investment coming through as a result of it. So there's some things going on the investment into the mining sector which suggest an improvement. Okay, you've got a low dollar which has complex impacts, but it is improving our international competitiveness. It's one of the reasons why we've got arguably a trade surplus for the first time in 44 years. Because we've got the mixture of stronger commodity prices because of these Brazilian challenges, right? And on the flip side, really strong competitiveness for our service exports, right? So it's like the opposite of Dutch disease is happening right now, which is sort of nice, right? So I think that's very sort of cyclical, though. It's very short term. Is it fixing the structural challenges in the economy? I don't really think so. There's some other things, though, that maybe are helping us get there. What are some other things that are maybe indicating the economy is turning the corner?
So looking beyond some of those global influences, looking a little bit more domestically, there has been, obviously what the RBA has done in terms of their monetary policy. They've gone, pretty expansionary with their 2 consecutive cuts in June, July. Right, so we are now sitting at a cash rate of 1%.
And it's likely that's maybe what's caused the housing market to tick up a little as well, right?
And so that is potentially having an impact to kind of drive the economy forward a little bit, as Rowan was saying about the housing market, but also just consumption and investment.
So we have this situation then, okay, where we've got the economy, as we looked at the data, looking a little shaky still, but then we've got some things that indicate maybe we're doing okay. Housing market, investment in the mining sector, trade surpluses, low dollar international competitiveness, tax cuts, interest rates, right? A lot of that though still indicates that it isn't here yet. It's like we hope it's going to hit, right? But the data doesn't show that. But it does take time, right? So the unemployment increase may just be like a really large boat in water that's taking a long time to turn. It may be that it's still moving in that direction, but it's turned. So it could be that we are going to see an uptick in improvement in these. But I do think there are still ongoing concerns for the Australian economy. And these are some concerns that you can really bring into your analysis, particularly in the essays. So, what are these concerns? What are your concerns, Terry?
Okay. Well, my concerns is, of course, wage growth. I was just joking. Well, obviously, wage growth is a big concern just for, lots of workers and households in Australia. It hasn't really picked up. We're still looking at that 2.3% figure that we've been looking at before. It is, of course, better than 2017 when it was down in 1.9, but we've been better than that, but we haven't moved, right? We haven't improved, and the fact is, if you don't increase wages, consumption is going to continue to be sluggish. And then the other thing was just this underutilization, right? I think that's gone up a tick. It's indicative of the fact that, we're trying, right? We're really, really trying to get, unemployment outcomes to improve. And yet they're the ones that are still continually slipping. So I am a little bit worried about that. Is it a sign of, like as Rowan was saying, more structural issues that, no amount of, monetary, expansionary monetary policy is going to actually necessarily fix? So there's also that.
And that, just to probably build on that a little bit, I think that is the real concerning part of all of this. Like, if we look at all of the sort of, suggested things that are causing us to turn the corner, okay? If we look at them, none of them really deal with the issue of wage growth. Short of maybe the tax cuts, okay? And then that's a very short term. It's not like a long term. It's just like a little hit to the bank account. And the big challenge is most people are choosing to use the tax cuts and interest rates cuts not to go and spend more, but to pay down debt.
Yeah, pay off, yeah. Okay,
so there's a limit there. And if we look at the rest of it, it's like, okay, it's some good fundamentals, but it doesn't sort out the wage growth issue. And, while we have inflation targeting, yes, as the RBA's mandate, they've basically said unemployment is their big issue right now.
Yes.
Right? Because they don't see themselves hitting inflation if they sort that out. Now, that's my concern, is that we're not really seeing, look, the RBA can't. This is not all on the RBA's back, right? It's on the government, it's on fiscal policy and their implementation of microeconomic reform. But I think what it does certainly highlight is a concern that unemployment is still growing. The gap's growing between unemployment and the Nauru, and nothing's being done to sort out the issue of wage growth and the capacity there.
And just to add on to that, there's been, analysis done by the RBA, and at this stage, they haven't found a reason for why wages aren't growing, and that's concerning, at least to me, right? Because they have access to data that we don't have, right? And they're looking at the data and they're saying, we're not sure, right? And so, for me, I think it'd be important for them to find, an underlying reason, because, at this stage, what Rowan was saying is we're just putting a bandage over a problem. We're not actually figuring out what that problem actually is. So that's going to remain.
It's a really good analogy.
Yeah. So.
And look, one of the reasons it could be, right, that sort of, and to be honest, it's something that the RBA has started to consider is also just population growth. One of the things that we're having, and it's so critical, is immigration. We need it in terms of skills, in terms of diversity. But on the flip side, what we have been seeing is that we have this spare capacity, right? And so the RBA has, the governor in a recent speech was also looking at, the fact that to some extent our labour supply has been outstripping, and the growth in our labour supply has been outstripping the demand for labour. And as our labour supply grows, people typically start actively seeking work and then become unemployed. So it could be another reason why, it's an underlying problem, but it's complex and they don't know. Yeah. So, look, I think the other thing for me that's still a concern at a domestic level before we look at maybe the global stuff that's at play, is certainly the ongoing low labour productivity growth. Wage growth strongly correlates to labour productivity growth, and we've seen that labour productivity growth has remained low. The trends are such that looking at the data, it dropped actually in the first quarter of this year. So it's actually been going the wrong way, which also then is sort of a little bit concerning for how we get wages going. If another key thing is not lifting it, it's going to be an issue. So I think there's still concerns, but it's not all doom and gloom, right? I think that there is some better news here. What about the globe, right? How is that going to influence all of this?
Okay, so I think the big cloud overhanging, in my opinion, is of course the US-China trade and technology dispute, as Rowan. I've noticed you've moved on from calling it a trade war.
Well, the only reason I'm not calling it a trade war is just tongue-in-cheek. Good old Governor Lau no longer calls it a trade war either, right? In his recent speech, it was trade and technology dispute. But I think what's important about it, and the reason I actually have been intentional about changing the terminology, and it's something for you to think about using in your essays, is that the reason the trade war is occurring is it's a lot of it's to do with technology disputes. And so I think it's just recognising that it's not a pure protectionism play for the sake of it. There's some other stuff that's been driving this. So I think it's a more accurate way to describe it, basically. Yeah. So, sorry, you were saying global things.
Yeah, basically, if we have this US-China trade and technology dispute, it's just this big cloud, hanging over everybody's head. They don't act with confidence. People are still waiting. Is China going to devalue their currency? Are there more tariffs on the way? Is it going to be resolved? And people don't like to act in markets where they're not sure what's going to happen next, especially if it's looking to be quite, contractionary.
That's right. And it's not just it. You've got issues in Hong Kong. You've got, Japan, South Korea, there's tensions. You've got ongoing Brexit mess. Okay. You've got, a lot of political instability with, Donald Trump and the US.
Everybody.
Yeah, and everybody. So I think all of that has just created, with, possible impeachments and this, that, and the other, creates, I think, a context whereby, one, it's uncertain.
Yeah.
And two, that will place further downward pressure on our dollar. Now, remember, right now, that's been a good thing because it's improved our international competitiveness of our services. It's also been a good thing because we've had good terms of trade. Our commodity prices have remained high. Those commodity prices may not remain high over the long term. There's cyclical things that have caused that. So, there is a point where our dollar can drop too low, okay? And then we're in a place where our imports start costing a lot. And, we rely on a fair bit of imports, okay? We, bring in a fair bit of intermediate consumer goods, particularly consumer goods in Australia. So over the long term, there also is the dollar going too low to be, there is the Goldilocks zone, right? Which is, not too cold, not too hot, just right. And we're sort of just starting to fall below that now.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's why the other concern I'd have is the global headwinds, what it means for our dollar continuing to go down. So I think there you have it, guys. It's a bit of a stat update. It's a bit of the state of the Australian economy. It's where there's some good stuff going on, where there's some challenges, some issues that haven't been dealt with. If you have any questions.
Yeah. Well, I've just got one, Rowan.
Cool. Great. Let's hope we can answer it.
Just to wrap things up a little bit, for an economics student just about to sit the HSC, how would they best integrate this kind of recent, just the last couple of month development into their responses? Do they talk about, do they bring in those challenges, or do they just kind of keep it as, okay, we've turned the corner? What do you think?
Look, I think it's critical you highlight the challenges. I don't know if you agree with me on this.
No, I definitely do.
I think particularly if you want to score a band 6, you're aiming for a high result in economics, your ability to think critically and to be quite critical as well of both the policies and also the economic conditions is what's going to help you stand out. So honestly, a better response is going to be critical. It's going to show where there are problems, where there are issues that are unresolved. And that also shows that you understand the material better, that you can analyze and you can see that things are papered over, things have got a band-aid on. It's not really dealt with. So I'd certainly really strongly encourage you to don't go all rosy and, to really dig in and highlight. And in fact, like if I had to even, and look, I don't want you to take this too far to heart, but if you were doing like a policy analysis question, like it's, effectiveness of, let's say, macro policy on an issue, almost a third of each paragraph could be really like analysis and critique, really. Now you've got to make sure you're hitting some other things in that essay, but and in your introduction. But I think you should. Would you agree? I
would agree. As you were saying, hitting the other things. I think one of those things would just be actually backing up your claims, right? Because I think it's just like if you had a friend, right, who talks a big talk, but they never back it up, right? So that's what we want you to do. We want you to talk big talk. We want you to address these, these concerns which even politicians and even policymakers and researchers are grappling with at the moment. We want you guys to talk about these things, but we also just want you to make sure that you're backing up your point with your course theory.
That's right. Yeah, really, really critical. Because I think otherwise, you're not going to hit the marks that you need to, that you could be getting and should be getting.
Yes.
Just because you haven't really ticked those boxes to show that you've got a theoretical understanding and you've got then the ability to apply it critically.
Yeah.
So awesome, guys. To wrap up, if you do have final questions before you go into your HSC Eco exam, leave them in the comments below. Terry and myself, one of our team, will jump in and do our best to respond. Seriously, all the best for the exam. We wish that, we hope that you nail it. We'd love to hear how you go at the end of the journey. Send us a message, right?
Would it be a message or email or?
Yeah, you can send us an email. You can send us a message, okay? You could leave a comment, if you feel like publicly,
that's what I thought.
sharing that. But if not, send us an email definitely or a message on social media. We'd love to hear how you go. And of course, at the end of that entire journey as well, if, you get your results back and you nail it and you think, what, I want to give back. I want to help other students get passionate about economics. Get in touch with us. We've got an amazing team of tutors and mentors that support students across Sydney in economics. And, we'll be looking for people to join our team. So, keep that in mind, right?
What about a new host of the HSC Economics Review?
I don't know. I don't know if we're ready to do that, though. Maybe Terry's hinting that we're going to get rid of me. So, hey, that's possible. Awesome, guys. All the best. And we'll see you after your HSC exam.
Best of luck.